Katie. I'm the general manager here at ADAC, and I want to thank all of you for being here for Discover ADAC, and really more importantly, I want to welcome you back in person to Discover ADAC. It's awesome to see everybody here and to see your faces, even with masks on, so thank you so much for being here. I also wanted to let everybody know, guess what? It's our 60th anniversary, so we're going to be celebrating that all week long. So a little cheers and happy birthday to ADAC, 60th birthday. Yes. I also want to say thank you to our sponsors today. Theodore Alexander is our showroom partner, and then Modern Luxury. The amazing team at Modern Luxury is hosting today's event, and we're so grateful to them for helping us every single market put on awesome, amazing events. And I almost forgot a very important special thank you to Jabron Shepard, who's the costume designer here in Atlanta that designed this beautiful, beautiful dress with using Theodore Alexander fabrics. And with that, I'm going to turn everything over to the new editor-in-chief of Interiors Atlanta and The Atlantan, Caroline Perrott.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. As she said, I'm the new editor-in-chief of The Atlantan and Interiors Atlanta. It's been such a wonderful time getting to join Modern Luxury in this position and work with the ADAC community, specifically on interiors, and I'm so excited to be a part of this today. So today we're going to be talking about two topics that coincide a lot, interiors and fashion. And with me today, I have James Aguiar, and he is our creative director for Modern Luxury and VP of Fashion, and he does all things fashion. And so he's going to tell a little bit about himself and his background before we start.
We are?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Well, first of all, I'll say thank you, and thank you for having me, ADAC, and happy birthday. When this concept came up, I got very excited because for me, fashion touches everything that we do, and it's where I kind of live in my life. It's my sandbox, as I like to say. But for me, I can't create without just in a fishbowl. To me, fashion touches absolutely everything that we see, do, hear, watch. It's theater, it's museums, it's movies, it's really every cultural discipline, but especially in interiors. And I think in the last probably 20, certainly the last 10 years, fashion and interiors have come together in no way like we've seen before. So I'm excited to talk about it and how I approach it with what I do at Modern Luxury.
And we got him all the way from New York today, so we're very, very happy to have him. And hopefully the weather clears out so it's not so gross.
I brought the sun, by the way.
Yes, he brought the sun.
We saw that.
And then also from the interior side, we have Justin Q. Williams joining us. And he was part of our To Live and Dine event, and he's a wonderful interior designer here in Atlanta. So do you just want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Justin Q. Williams. First, I'd like to thank you guys for having me. These are always fun because it just gives us a chance to talk about our perspectives, but also it allows us for you guys to expose us to your perspectives. So I'm really appreciative for the opportunity. My name is Justin Q. Williams. I'm a residential interior designer based here in Atlanta, but I've done homes all across the globe, really, and also television personality with HGTV. And I'm very glad to be here today, and thank you so much for having me.
Yes, you might see Justin on your TV sometime soon and previously if they play some reruns,
Yeah.
But he's always on HGTV, so be on the lookout for him. All right, so starting off, when we got together, James, Justin, and I, to talk about this subject, James called out this image from a previous a previous Modern Luxury fashion feature. And this is a Fendi photo shoot, and I believe it was in Rome. And James was like, this is the most iconic image because it literally is an embodiment of what we're talking about.
I think when I was lucky enough to tour the private Palazzo at Fendi, which sits above the store in Rome. And it was designed by Studio d'Amore, where they went into this incredibly old and classical structure and did things that are pretty dramatic and unexpected. There's a lot of things at play here with Fendi. So we obviously have the the model dressed in Fendi. We have that yellow chair. This yellow is also the branding color for Fendi. It's their bags, it's their boxes. So there's a lot of things that come together in this image and speak to me why fashion and interiors are so related.
Yeah, and so to add to that, when I first saw this photo, I thought, imagine this photo on a white backdrop. Not the same effect, right? So when you add the architectural details of this home, I mean, it just really makes this photo pop. And that goes to show the perfect marriage between fashion and interiors.
And the other thing about this image is, normally I work with fashion photographers. This was shot by an interiors photographer who shoots for AD and World of Interiors and Elle Decor and a lot of big interior publications, not yet ours, but we'll get them. And I wanted somebody who didn't treat the model as a model. It was almost just sort of like, I mean, I hate to say this, but she could be a chair, she could be a sofa. And we did this very simply and just to really capture the interiors, and I think you'll see some other images of it.
Yes, you will. But just for something fun, when we were talking about this image, Justin was like, I have this photo that kind of looks similar. It pulls up the same emerald colors, the same yellow. So Justin, tell us what's the circumstance of this photo?
So let me tell you, oftentimes as interior designers, where are my interior designers, by the way, in the room? Yeah, we've got quite a few. So oftentimes we have those parameters. Those parameters are called clients. And so thankfully, with this particular space, I didn't have a client. And I could create whatever space I wanted to create. And I thought, what great contrast would it be to have this emerald against this gold and to bring in creams and taupes and just kind of have fun and play with it a bit and just kind of let the two dance together. So that's what I did in this space, and this is the product that it rendered.
Amazing.
And we talk about trends. This is like the perfect example of how trends are born. And I will say this about fashion and interiors. Fashion, as we know, is quick. It's fast, it's a season. Interior trends tend to last a little bit longer. I mean, you live with it, not many, unless you're Auntie Mame, you're not changing your interiors every season.
Right.
So it's a little bit more cautious, and I think we can get into that a little bit later as well.
Definitely.
Definitely. All right. So James just came from New York Fashion Week, and he has been to many, many, many fashion weeks in the past, and he just revolves in that world. So from his time at Fashion Week, he went to many shows, and he kind of picked up on 4 big trends that are not necessarily for the season, but they're kind of an overarching trend that comes back again and again and again. And one of them was color. So James, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you saw color and what colors you were seeing?
I think we saw color in almost every single collection, and it sounds a little bit strange, but the nuances of color are very interesting. You know, we agonize over 50 shades of navy. The color this time was very strong. It was very saturated. It wasn't pastel or subdued. It was very much in your face. So I think that, for me, that's always fun. Color, whether you're in television, interiors, fashion, it's always exciting, it always pops, it always makes for a more dynamic image. So I'm always excited to see that. And I think that, like I said, we'll start seeing that. I mean, every interior issue has a color issue and how that plays out in interiors.
And as a designer, when it comes to color, when I was younger and first started this thing, I would throw splashes of color everywhere. I mean, just bright, loud colors. But as I've gotten older, I've learned to pare it down and just throw in a pop, you know, because that pop can really help to make that space feel elevated, sophisticated, and just really help to deliver the message that you want from that particular space. When I'm designing, I use what's called the color triangle. And in that triangle, I'll reflect on this side of the space, what's on that side of the space, what's at the top of the space. And that really does help to make that room feel well designed. But as these trends with color go in and out, just like you said, it tends to last a bit longer in interiors than it does in fashion. But I mean, I appreciate it.
What are your favorite things to throw color in? Like what, like the decor, or do you have like a certain thing that you go to get that pop of color?
It's typically the accents. So like in that green and gold room, it was in the accents. It was in the chairs. It was in the lighting. You know, things of that nature are typically what I go to.
Amazing. Well, I included 2 homes that were previously on our Modern Luxury Interiors Atlanta covers, and I think they exhibit amazing use of color. And we have both sides of the color triangle, or the color circle, color wheel. We have brights, and then we also have the dark muted tones with pops of magenta and pink. So there's definitely different ways to utilize color, and you can see that in interiors, in both interiors and fashion.
For sure. Just while we're on this one.
Yeah.
The space on the right is the perfect example of how you can mix traditional pieces and give them a modern take to create this beautiful transitional space that is still fun, yet still sophisticated. I just wanted to add that to that space because I like it a lot.
Yeah, it got our cover, so we like it a lot too. All right, the next trend that was really strong, and I know minimal seems like an overarching thing, and we did want it to be that way, and it's quite the opposite of color. But James saw a lot of it being used in many of the designer shows that was just very minimal, monochromatic, neutral color palette. So do you want to speak to that, James?
Yeah, I think the perfect example is Tom Brown, who we all know is an incredible men's and women's wear designer and sticks very, very strictly to a gray flannel code. But this show was particularly exciting because, unfortunately, it was hard to photograph. You walked in, and he actually built a home in the center of the stage. And the whole show was about this couple's home and their gardens. And these characters that were walking by were representative of the statues that would be in a garden like that. So where you see the sort of half arm and the elongated, it represented the idea that when we look at statuary that's that old, oftentimes the arms are broken off, and there were varying degrees of that. And then what he did at the end of the show was introduce the same silhouettes, but this time in color, because originally statues were painted. I mean, we're so used to seeing, you know, white Greek statues that are white marble. More often not, they were painted with color, and what we're seeing is the result of years and years and years and years gone by. The minimal trend, though, is really about, and I think Justin can speak to this better, but the strict adherence to less is more. And I think that sometimes it's a harder discipline because with color and florals, you can hide a lot. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors. But with minimal, your eye goes immediately to the detail that might not be right, or the seam, or the, I don't know the terms, but you know, the borders on walls, all of those things really pop out if it's not 100%. So minimal is very difficult, and that's why I included it, because it's always an important fashion statement, but I think it's an ongoing interior statement as well.
Absolutely, and in interiors, when it comes to being a minimalist, you also have to choose very beautiful pieces. You know, if you have 3 pieces in a room, they better be some stunning 3 pieces, you know? So I think that it's so important that even as designers, when we're putting pieces into a space, that we're selective about what we're putting into that space and make sure that it's special and make sure that it tells a story, because if not, you're just gonna have a room that doesn't have anything in it.
It's very hard to buy for a minimalist because they really don't know what to do with it. They just sort of go, oh, and then it goes out the door. You know, it's not right for this interior. Let's see what you chose for.
Yes, so I included 3 projects of Justin's for him to kind of talk about. Not only do they stick to that gray kind of Tom Brown color palette, which is reflected of the fashion, but they also are very minimal in certain ways. So Justin, why don't you talk about the rooms?
For sure. So the most minimal house on this board would be the top left house. It's a mid-century modern home in Druid Hills area of Atlanta. and it was a complete renovation. I mean, the whole house was gutted down to the studs, which was great for me.
Yeah.
You know, that pillar that you see there is actually a fireplace, and it was all brick. And so what we did, we was just layered it with drywall to, you know, just make it all neutral. And I didn't want this heavy structure in this minimalist space. But also, I fought for those statues in that window. I fought the good fight and I won, thankfully. The client, they didn't see the vision at first.
They're very cool.
But they look great there, and it really does tell that more modern story for that home. So I really did appreciate that part of that house. The two others, bedrooms,
They're not minimal.
I love bedrooms, and I have to layer bedrooms, but what I don't typically do is add a lot of pillows. If you see the decorative pillows on the space on the right, those are just 3 decorative pillows. The others are sleeping pillows. So I don't typically add a lot of pillows and layers to beds, but as far as the aesthetic, that is totally my aesthetic now. It's all neutral. And I love being neutral.
Well, I think that's another way to look at minimalism is minimal in color, kind of
exactly.
sticking with the 3 colors, and that
Yeah.
can be the way in which you incorporate minimal into
For
your
sure,
design.
for sure.
If you have a client who's like, I want, you know, a bunch of furniture in a space or whatever it may be, you can stick to a color palette in a
Neutral
minimal
color
way.
palette, definitely.
All right, let's move along. Okay, so I know that we all just saw everyone go to the Met Ball, and we saw all of the fabulous or less fabulous outfits that people wore. And a lot of people, there was a lot of leeway in the Met Ball and Met Gala this year because the theme was American, and that can be interpreted in so many different ways. It could be an American designer, it could be the colors, it could be, I mean, a myriad of different things could be categorized as American. So it was interesting to see all these people show up in all their different gowns and how they interpreted it. So the same can be said in interiors. We see American being a trend in the designer or, you know, that Americana feel. So James, why don't you talk a little bit about the American fashion and the exhibit at the Met?
Well, I was lucky because nobody knows this, but the day of the Met Gala, they do a press preview for about 100 people, and I get to go to that, and we get to see the exhibit. And unfortunately, the exhibit's not really talked about a lot on the carpet. You know, it's about the hoopla, which I understand. But when I heard about this theme, I thought, oh my, it's just going to be a sort of sea of Ralph Lauren and Donna Karan. And what was really extraordinary about this exhibit, and anybody who can go, certainly go, is it's really 70% almost unknown designers. And what they really did was they searched high and low for designers that were making a difference in any way, shape, or form. It wasn't about business, it wasn't about huge companies. So that was very, very nice. And there was one look represented. But what it said to me was American fashion doesn't have to be you know, red, white, and blue. It doesn't have to be about the Southwest. It doesn't have to be about New York. It's really a patchwork, and they use that term a lot in the exhibit. So I feel like this idea will resonate not only with fashion, but certainly in interiors, and it's a moment to be proud and celebrated. This exhibit is in 2 parts. We're going to see what we saw here, and then in May, it continues. So that theme is going to continue more and more. And here's my little secret that I tell a lot of fashion designers and students, because I'm always asked, well, how do trends happen? Why does everybody end up doing the same thing? And somebody told me years and years ago, if you want to be in touch, just follow whatever museums are doing big exhibits. It doesn't have to be the Met, it doesn't have to be the Louvre, it can be any museum. But if you're connected to what a significant museum is doing, you're always going to be able to pull on something that has cultural impact and a lasting moment. So that's my little tip for all the interior designers out there.
It's very interesting. Okay, so Justin shared some images with me, and yes, they do use navy, but we chose these specifically for another reason. Justin?
Yeah, so first, American design in interiors realm is hugely influenced by European design. I think we all know that, especially from earlier times, but also even in current day. With these two spaces, though, we had a conversation yesterday when we talked about grunge and mixing grunge with things that are more refined. And so the space on the left is a loft. Ironically, my client purchased the loft that was above and the one that was below. We put a hole in the ground and put in a staircase. And, but he wanted a more refined loft, and so we gutted everything. I kept the industrial ceiling because I thought that that was a good taste to add to this more refined space, and then throw in tons of huge chandeliers and great linens and things of that nature. So that was the space on the left. The space on the right is a secondary bedroom, but I had to use colors that were high in contrast because I did paint the ceiling also in that space a dark color. And instead of it feeling like a cave, I wanted to, bring in some whites and things of that nature to brighten the space and create that heavy contrast so that you do have that wow factor when you walk in. But in all of my work, I do heavily focus on lighting. You can't fully see the chandelier in the right picture, but there's always a unique chandelier in every space that I do because I feel that lighting is so important, but it's also one feature that I feel that a lot of designers forget about, and it's something that we should all focus on when we're creating these beautiful spaces.
Talk a little bit about Kelly, Mike, and Michael.
Yeah, so Mikhail was actually here. I think he was here virtually today. Yeah.
Wonderful.
So he mixes a lot of old with the new. Kelly is just out there with her designs. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kelly Wersler, but her designs are just out there, and she can go as traditional as possible. She can also mix the two together and have great transitional spaces. And Michael Smith, I mean, he's done things from the White House to other residences that have great range. I love designers that have great range because they're going to be approached by so many different people that want to use them in their homes, but you have to be able to go from here to there and everything in between. I think that that is so important. You do have designers that are strictly modern. You have those that are strictly traditional, and that's fine, but the ones that I like are the ones that can go the full range.
Interestingly enough, Kelly Wersler had a clothing line, I don't know, maybe 2 or actually probably longer now, 8 years ago. And she came to me and said, I'm thinking about doing fashion. And I said, why? Why would you do this? And she had it for a minute, but I think interiors is her strong point.
Thing, yeah.
But it's
The crossover is there.
It's all there, and I think Ralph Lauren is the perfect example of that too. A huge clothing brand and a very successful furniture business and home business as well.
For sure.
It's interesting too, talking about the patchwork, that word was used a lot in the exhibit. American design so much is almost like a patchwork of different influences that we've created to create American design. You have the industrial glam that's pulling from European design, and then a little bit of New York loft looking. It's a combination that creates its own way, the American way. And also on this page, I wanted to include not only images, but these 3 designers that I got from Justin to show the versatility of American design. It's not only a look, it is your background. And that was also translated in the Met. So, okay, next we have, let's see if it goes. There we go. Florals, everyone's favorite florals. These are looks that James passed along to me from New York Fashion Week, and florals is such my personal favorite, and it is such an interesting look. So James, why don't you talk a little bit about florals in design?
Well, let's just get it out of the way. Groundbreaking, florals, we can all say it. But unfortunately, they come back. What was different this time for me was, again, that saturated color. But I wanted to highlight the middle slide, which is Adam Lippis, who found a floral designer and photographer on Instagram. I believe she's Dutch. Sorry, I don't know her name. And through Instagram, they began collaborating and talking. And this is completely hand-beaded, one of her creations. But it also, to me, speaks to the idea of interiors because it's in that beautiful vase, that classic blue and white. and the most exquisite beaded floral dress. And Justin, I think floral, never goes away for interiors as well. But again, the saturated color and the idea of being bold and daring, and which I think we can all attribute to sort of being at home for a while now too.
Yeah. In the interiors world, you think back in the day florals, right, where your grandma had that really tight,
Some examples.
yeah, the really tight florals on the walls, like so, right? But if you find current day florals, you'll see something that's much like my shirt. I wore this on purpose, y'all. So see this shirt, okay? I wore this on
yes.
purpose. So you'll see this print more where there's a dark background and then there are huge bulbs across the wall, and you'll have it in wallpaper. Some people use it on the wall, some people use it on the ceiling. So like you were saying, James, it goes and it comes right back. It may come back in a different way.
And this time it seems like it's coming back in a more saturated, more bold way.
Definitely more bold. But these interiors are beautiful, and I love that wallpaper is back, and I think that for so many years we hadn't seen it, and I love the way that it's being used now.
Agreed.
And in this slide, I included some more traditional looking florals, as well as a more modern take on florals. It doesn't always have to be the stuffy,
Right.
what you think of when you think of floral wallpaper. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I think we all know that. The best part is this day and age, there's so much available to us, so we can use it creatively. Okay, next we have a very special section. We're kind of moving into a more fashion-y, real-world examples of the way that interiors influenced fashion choices. So we have 3 different photo shoots that James produced and directed that have been in past issues of Modern Luxury. And this first one is the Louis Vuitton shoot. And James, do you want to talk a little bit about the location?
Sure. I mean, what a location. This is the Villa Rothschild in Nice, France. And Vuitton had done their cruise show pretty close by and said, why don't you shoot the collection while you're here? So we found this incredible location. And what's so interesting about this location is a lot of that furniture that the models are sitting on, which they weren't supposed to sit on, but I said, no, we're gonna sit. Some of that furniture is actually Marie Antoinette's. So I didn't know that until after. But what's extraordinary about this location is at the time, the woman who decorated this was using disparate elements from different time periods as far back as you could go at that time, and putting them together in sort of a madcap, eccentric way. And I always think that, when it's wrong, it's right. And that's why, mixing this idea of what Vuitton is now, this kind of madcap 18th century mixed with streetwear, to me it makes absolute sense that we would shoot in this classical of a location and really twist it and bring it into this century.
We kind of talked about that.
Like the Rococo style?
Yeah, talking about trends and where trends are born, that's where they're born, doing things that aren't, by the books.
Never by the book. I mean, honestly, it should, well, I think we have a couple of slides to do that.
All right, our next shoot. So this is where the original photo that I showed you at the beginning with that beautiful yellow. This is the shoot in Rome for Fendi. As you can see, the house itself, it's not a house, it's a
Palazzo.
Palazzo above the store is beautiful. James talked a little bit about the models. The photographer asked the models to almost pose like a piece of furniture instead of, the back and forth kind of fluid movement that you usually see in a photo shoot with models.
Right.
James, do you have anything to say? What do you think about?
Well, I do. I mean, when I saw this location, I said, first of all, I have to shoot here. There's a lot of daring, and there's a lot of mistakes in this. This is Studio d'Amore, which is a Milanese-based design firm, and everything about this is sort of wrong, right? I mean, painting these walls, first of all, in this lacquered, intensely odd color, putting that wall art over the mirror in the way that they did, mixing that screen with that little chaise in this odd room. But ultimately, it makes for your eye to go, it changes your eye. And I think that that's what good design does. I think that's what good fashion does. I think, if we look at the same thing every day, and certainly on a runway, if I see a collection and I'm like, that's just the way people look, it's fine. It doesn't move my needle, though. It's the people that dare to shift your brain that make a difference, and that's what this represents to me.
I love it. It's also something to say about the saturation that we're seeing a lot in fashion. I mean, the whole wall being the blue is such a saturated color palette.
Well, talk about the client. I mean, these are the Fendi, so the client to allow somebody to say, okay, go paint those walls, this insane color. You almost, you see what it probably looked like before. So this is very daring.
Definitely. All right, our last and most recent is the Scoochie photo shoot, and this is the most interesting to me.
This was my favorite.
You don't have 3 organs in your living room?
James, tell us about this photo shoot.
Okay, so this was a collaboration with Gucci for Modern Luxury. It came up very quickly, and I had maybe a week to find a location, and this was from a realtor who had sent me this house months ago, and it always stuck with me because it was so odd and weird and dilapidated and falling apart. We did not do anything in this house. The peeling wallpaper, the intensely purple, oddly 70s Baroque bedroom, the gilded mirrors. Can you go backwards?
To this main.
Yeah, so that the upper left, they had 3 organs in their living room. And this kind of hideous sofa, and so it's my job, I think, to find the beauty in the hideous and to marry the cultural moments that are going on. And certainly Gucci is a brand right now that's not following any rules, that does find the beauty in the odd. Would I decorate my house like this? Absolutely not. Would anybody here? Probably not. But you might take away something. I'm not sure what that is. I'll let Justin speak to it. But you might take something away, and that's your job as the designer.
Right, and I think that this was my favorite because I am a formerly trained photo stylist, and what we do is, kind of against what designers do, and it's so important that designers do hire a photo stylist, but also, pick up some of those skills yourself so that when it's time to shoot your products, or your projects rather, you'll get a good shot. At the end of the day, your photo stylist wants to get a good shot. They don't care if the room is pretty or not. We're just there to get a beautiful shot on paper, right? In print work. So what I love about this is that it is so against the grain. And the thing is, you're going to see this somewhere else. Somebody else is going to produce something like this.
Right.
Where you
probably
have that.
Kelly Wersler.
So you'll see this again. I just love how this turned out.
I think when we brought this photo shoot up, we talked about how it's kind of creating a trend out of something that is not a trend. Like it's creating a good out of bad.
Well, it's forgotten, you know what I mean? It's sort of like...
It's almost nostalgic in some ways.
Yeah, and this house with that, what is that, Mediterranean, Venetian? There's just so many things that you can say about it.
Definitely.
But for me to walk in and see a space like this untouched, it's just shocking almost that people did live like this.
Yeah.
Definitely a time warp.
It's a time warp.
Going back to photo styling, as the editor and getting photos from clients, you are so right in saying that because you can make a space like this look so gorgeous just in the way that you style it and package it and present it to the world, because most of the times the general public's not going to see your work. They're not going to see the hours and hours and hours that you put in to create this beautiful masterpiece. So getting somebody who knows how to photograph a space, and earlier we were trying to figure out how to situate our chairs up here, and we called in Justin, and he made it look perfect. We were messing around with it, trying to fix, and we're like, it still looks weird, it still looks weird, and Justin made it look fabulous. So that's just another great thing to keep in mind. All right, well, that concludes our presentation, just PowerPoint-wise. We do want to open the floor up for a Q&A. I allotted some time because I feel like there are going to be a lot of questions because we have so many designers in the room. And I did want to give our designer.
Well, can I take over?
Yes, oh, please.
So one of my favorite things is when you bring to life literally what we're talking about, fashion and interiors. So we were lucky to work with the fabulous showroom, and Gibran Shepard, who is here today, created this, Gibran, come up, this amazing French dress matching the fabric, which I hope you guys all take pictures and Instagram it because it's just so beautiful. Gibran, talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I saw a picture of the chairs, and they have this really classic kind of traditional shape. And so I started thinking about trench coats. And right now in my work, I'm exploring a lot with volume. Particularly, so my mother, it's very like, this presentation was very like, ooh, the zeitgeist. Because I do feel like I'm quite a minimal designer. And I really like to focus on the shape and the silhouette of things. And I'm an American designer, ultimately, with a mixed cultural and ethnic background. My mom is Pakistani. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing like looks at the burqa and like the volume and the motion of the burqa, and how that both is a garment that is meant to hide and cover, but also when you look at it, it's a void in space. So you can't help but like kind of keep your eye on it. And so a lot of like the volume and the shape that I added to kind of these classic trench coat, like storm flap elements, are inspired by like that movement of the burqa. Yeah, America, you know?
and working with actual textiles, not easy.
Yeah, so Jim Thompson actually provided these chairs and the fabric for us, and we came up with this wonderful idea to bring in Gibran and design this, and he kind of just took it and ran with it. And we were so thankful and lucky to have somebody do that for us, because when we got the fabric, we were like, okay, what do we, not as a designer, I was like, what do we do? What do we do with this? And we had an amazing designer come and help us out. So make sure you come up here. It's a great Instagram moment. Definitely, and tag, all of the people. So back to the Q&A. Obviously, questions from anywhere from fashion, if you want to know what shows James went to at New York Fashion Week, or anything interiors. So I'm going to open up the floor, and we do have a mic, so just kindly raise your hand. Come on, who's first?
Do you have a question?
Well, I have a question.
Okay.
All right, in terms of New York Fashion Week, obviously we're talking about color. Was there one particular color that really just stood out to you as that, like you were just drawn to it? And same question for you, is there a color in design right now that you are just really loving and drawn to?
For me, I think it was best exemplified at the red carpet at the Emmy Awards the other night. Michaela Cole in that sort of vibrant, a lot of people were calling it yellow, it felt fluorescent to me. Kaylee Cuoco in her yellow dress.
Neon.
And almost neon.
Yeah.
So sort of, that neon yellow, that neon or fluorescent orange, it stood out to me. Is it my favorite? No, but I thought it was beautiful on Michaela and Kaylee, and I think we saw that a lot during Fashion Week.
And I think,
go ahead.
I think in interiors, I'm finding more moody colors. So deep blues, deep greens, kind of what you saw there, like that is what I'm seeing everywhere in the interiors world.
From an editor's standpoint, this is Radar here on the left, the pink and green. I'm seeing so much green. It's like the color right now, it's very, very hot. Not just green, but like neon,
Right.
neon green. So that's what stands out to me as an editor. At least that's what I'm seeing through my emails that come to my inbox. All right, anybody else? It could be any kind of question. Okay, right here. We have a mic for you.
I'm just curious to know if you, both as designers, embrace trends or if you tend to move away from them.
That's a great question.
That's a good question.
That's such a good question.
That is a really good question. I tend to stay away from trends. As far as color trends, I do like though, but you also have furniture trends as well, and those are the ones I typically stay away from.
I'll say it in French. Je déteste trends. I think it's limiting. You know, I think for me, once it's a trend, it's already done. So it's our job, like I keep saying, we have to be one step ahead. You know what I mean? I think trends are important. I think they're important for sales. I think they're important for clients who might not have the same vocabulary. And I think that they are important and they happen. You know, there's no doubt about that. But for me, I'm not a fan of trends.
That was a good question.
That was a fabulous question. Thank you so much. In terms of trends for me, I like to, for example, during this, I try to refer to all of these touch points as themes rather than trends. I think it's important to try to stay away from trends, although they are important to like the zeitgeist and the culture and all the industry and all of that. But I think sticking to an overarching theme is a lot more of it's a better way to go about using or adding trends to things. All right, any other questions? Anybody?
Come on, there's so many of you.
Okay, I'll go with one. I know there's one I wasn't supposed to ask. We had a fabulous dinner, by the way, last night celebrating ADAC's 60th or birthday, I guess, anniversary, whatever it is. And I know there's a question I'm not supposed to ask you guys, so I'm going to go with the one that it's okay. Justin, if you had to name some of the designers as you were, coming up in your career, there were certain ones that you really felt inspired by, or you felt like you'd really love to meet. Who were those designers?
So my design career started early on. I was 12 years old, and my parents are here to attest to that. Wave your hands, Mom and Dad. Hey, y'all.
Wait, and they don't have a question?
And so, to be quite honest, guys, my parents go to every single speaking event that I do. So,
That's adorable.
but growing up, my very favorite designer was Candace Alston, and the only reason she's not on the Americans list is because she's Canadian. Close, and I was going to push it and just put her on. But I just related more to her style and her aesthetic, and even her personality. I felt like I knew her because I was watching her on television. I connected with her as a child. And so growing up, that's who I connected with, and she is my absolute favorite. Yeah.
What about you? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So we talked about how the interiors styles stay longer than the fashion styles. Well, now that we're seeing this huge change in fashion, streetwear is really coming back, minimalistic silhouettes, but bold, saturated colors. Do you think that any time in the future this could relate and play into upcoming interiors trends?
I think you're already seeing it, you know, with those colors and styles and the more minimalist approach. Like, that's the route that everybody's going. Even transcending into architecture, if you're going into new homes that are being built, it's a lot more minimal. So I think it's already happening.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that too, after the year we've had, everyone's kind of realized they can live with less.
Yeah.
Living in their homes, it's really given new perspective on things. So I think that influences not only fashion, but going into the homes as well. Anyone else have any questions? Thank you so much for those who did ask. Anyone else?
One more question.
Go ahead, Deanne.
Obviously, after New York Fashion Week, is there one specific item that is a must-have item that we need to be looking for to purchase for the fall/winter? And is there one thing that you think we must get for our homes, whether it's wallpaper, whether it's a particular piece of furniture, or it's acrylic, or whatever it is there one item that we should be looking for our homes?
You go first while I ponder on that.
I think it's not such a new one, but when you keep seeing things, it becomes important. and I'm about to go to Paris, so that's when we'll really see things. But a large, oversized bag. I know we're all sort of carrying smaller bags now, but the bags have gotten much larger. So I think that that's going to be an important trend to buy into somehow.
I don't think for me it's a piece. I think just making the home more functional is a big thing. Kind of like you said, the 2 years we've had.
Yeah.
You know, it's just important to make sure that our homes are not just for show, but we can actually live there and function there and be happy there.
Definitely. I think for me, coming from like a editor's perspective, one thing that you can really like add to your home and is like a must-have item is like anything decor-wise. It can really just like change a space. And it can be really expensive or it can be really inexpensive. So you can, like, for example, if you got tired of staring at the same 4 walls during the pandemic, you can completely get out the decor and replace it, and it's a whole new space. So it's another little tip or trick. All right.
We've got one more.
Oh, amazing.
I don't know if I should say no. If you guys were having a dinner party and you had to invite 5 people, who would it be?
Ooh.
You can go.
Who wants to first?
Living or dead?
Which do you want?
Oh, gosh. Right at the top of my list would be Diana Vreeland, the erstwhile editor of Vogue and Bazaar through the 50s and 60s, and who really started the Costume Institute. So she would be number 1. I love Lady Gaga, so she would have to be there. I think Tina Turner I'd want there, because to me she's just the ultimate, and anybody who's seen the documentary knows. Gosh, I suppose I should invite my husband. Right? I guess so. And I think my mother, because she's not with us anymore.
Lovely. Justin?
Okay, I'm glad you said that because mine was going to seem so sappy. But I would invite my grandfather, who is passed, my grandmother, who I never met, my mom, my dad, and Candace Olsen.
We have to make that. That's got to be easy, right? Can't we just call Candace Olsen?
Tweet her.
Right, I have to.
Caroline, you got answers?
Oh, I mean, from outsiders, I'd love to pick Anna Wintour's brain, even though I know she's not the nicest of people. She's not the nicest, but I'd love to just pick her brain and see what she's all about and how she got to where she is. Let's see, my mom, because I bring her everywhere, and she would kill me if I didn't invite her. Who else? Probably a celebrity of sorts, probably like Blake Lively, because I love her, and I invite Ryan, her husband, and because he's cute, and somebody like that's like unknown. I don't even know them yet, but somebody who's like up in like the higher ranks of like a museum or like a philanthropy, so I can kind of like pick their brains so I can understand like how it all works and how they got to where they are. I think, you know, I am young in my position, and mentorship and picking people's brains about how they got into the places that they are is so important to me. That includes designers. I love talking to designers so I can get more knowledge about, you know, their industry, and I can't know it all, but I try. And I think that, you know, people who just know a little bit more than me are people I'd want at my dinner table, so I can learn and ask them all the questions that I want to ask. That was a great question.
Awesome.
That was a good question.
A lot of
Oh, we have one over here.
I'm in high school and I'm trying to work towards going to fashion school. So if you have any advice or anything that will help me get there, and like be successful. And
Well, you're doing the right thing, right? You're sitting here, you're taking it in. I think find the best school that you think is for you. Doesn't have to be, it can be in your backyard, it can be in New York, it can be RISD in Rhode Island has a great program. There's many, many places, but I would find the people that inspire you and ask them how they did it. Don't ask me, because my path was really not linear, so to speak. But just surround yourself with it.
Can I ask, what was your path? Could you tell us a little bit about it?
I've done many things, always in fashion. I did not have a formal training. I moved to New York when I was very young. I was 17. And started working in nightclubs and saw the burst of creativity and amazing creatures that would invent themselves every night, and that was always exciting. But my first job, believe it or not, was at Macy's in the windows, and I was styling the wigs for the mannequins, and I was quite young. But visual merchandising gave me everything that I needed to know about fashion, interiors, sets, and everything that I do today is sort of informed by that 8x10 box. And that's how I see things. So I went from Macy's to Bergdorf Goodman, and that really started everything. I did the windows there for years and then became the fashion director for the store, and that's what put me on the front rows and going to different fashion weeks and meeting designers. And so it's not a linear path, but I will say the visual merchandising side of what we do is very, very, very important. And I recommend it for anybody that wants to get into fashion and doesn't know what they necessarily want to do. And like I said, fashion for me touches everything.
It does.
I think we have one more question, but while I'm handing this off, Justin, any advice for a young student designer?
Oh, yeah. So when I was about 18 or 19, I would go to forums like this, and I would meet people. You meet editors and fashion people and other interior designers, and those are the people that you want to connect yourself with because they'll remember your face. I will always remember your face. And so when that time came and I was going under apprenticeship with Annette Joseph, who's a photo stylist, and that's how I started my career from that point. And I met her at one of these forums.
I had a comment, not necessarily a question, but Alexa, she's definitely going to, this is Alexa, and she is definitely, I feel like, going to be a budding, she's a budding designer. She is the young lady that we did, speaking of mannequins, the mannequin of the dinner last night, I did the florals, she did all the sleeves and the skirt that you saw that had the underneath the florals.
Amazing.
She did that. I love
Oh my God, that's so amazing.
So she kind of helped me with that stuff. Really.
Yeah.
I will post a picture of that later, so you have to give me your Instagram and everything.
And thank you again to Modern Luxury for that dinner.
All right, well, it looks like we're coming to an end in terms of time, but I did want to open the floor one more time just to say any last-minute thoughts on interiors and fashion. A nice little bow to tie it up. Do you have anything?
I have a little bow. It's from a woman that I worked with, speaking of mentors. This is when I was at Bergdorf Goodman. Her name was Dawn Mello, and she was the president of Bergdorf's for many years. She also famously discovered Tom Ford and put him at his role in Gucci. Anyway, when I was in Europe for the first time with her, going to the collections, and I was scared and nervous and, imposter syndrome and all of that stuff, and she said, stop. She just said, stop. She could see it in my face. And all she said was, look up. She just said, look up. And I looked up, and of course, there was the most amazing fresco mural, the most exquisite colors. And I've taken that with me for 25 years now, because it does mean we just need to stop and look. And sometimes the beauty is not where you expect it or will see it. So that's how I live my life. And when I'm going crazy and I'm going to, and I want it, I will stop myself and just look around. And I think if we can all do that, we're all designers.
I want to tag on to that with something that I learned from my mentor as well. And when you have a good mentor, you're going to have a lot of phrases, a lot of things that you learn from them, and a lot of those stories that you will never, ever, ever forget. And I remember when Instagram first was a thing, and my whole feed was me. I always had the camera on me. And she said, look, you need to turn the camera around. Turn the camera around. And once I did that, I just started to, like you, look up. You know, you start noticing so many different beautiful things. And so that, and another thing that she would always say is, do things with courage and do them on purpose. So don't doubt yourself. I used to doubt myself a whole lot. Don't ever doubt yourself. And the last thing that she would always say is, walk into the room like you own it.
There you go. Not only did you get some interiors and fashion inspiration, we also gave you a pet talk. So take that as you go. Thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you to everyone.
We'll go upstairs now to Theodore Alexander on the 4th floor for a reception.
Amazing.
Ooh, nice.
Thank you.